This is Democracy Watch. Okay, so Mark, I want to draw your attention to this clip from Trump.
Absentee voting, early voting, and election day voting are all good options. Republicans must make a plan, register, and vote. We've got to get crooked Joe Biden out of office. We've got to elect Republicans, and we're going to do it. We're going to have the greatest victory in the history of our country. Thank you very much. God bless you.
So, quite the change of heart from Donald Trump, who's suddenly become the nation's premier vote-by-mail early voting advocate. Do you think that this reversal is evidence of a major problem within the Republican base right now?
Yes and no. Okay, it is a major problem for Republican operatives. It is a major problem for the Chris Lasavitas of the world, who's one of his senior campaign officials and now runs the RNC. It is a major problem for anyone who knows anything about modern campaigning. The no is that I don't believe Donald Trump believes a word of what he just said. It is like a hostage video that he recorded. Okay.
Yeah.
He was told to read a bunch of words into a teleprompter that he does not believe, but which will be used by the Chris Lasavitas and the professional operatives to try to solve a mechanics problem they have. But I promise you, the next time he's up on stage with people out in the audience, and I'm being careful here because I don't want to get you sued, people out in the audience wearing diapers, saying, you know, real men wear diapers, okay? I'm just saying that's the audience, right? Like the next time he's up on stage and he's spouting off about Hannibal Lecter and he is, you know, going on his nonsense.
That's the late great. That's the late wonderful Hannibal Lecter to you.
Right. You know, the next time he's doing that, I promise you he's going to be bad-mouthing vote by mail. Donald Trump is not reformed on the question of vote by mail. Right. He hates vote by mail. He doesn't believe in vote by mail. He doesn't believe probably in early voting. And so I think that this is them trying to split this difference, as we've seen them do before, right? We have seen them simultaneously try to, what was the thing they ran out? They rolled out some Bank My Vote or something program.
Some tepid, some very, very tenuous effort at doing this, but
and then shortly after they do that, Donald Trump comes out and blasts vote by mail. What you really need to pay attention to is not what Donald Trump reads in a teleprompter, or for that matter, even what he says on stage in between praising fictional psychopathic killers. What you need to pay attention to is what their lawyers are doing in court. And right now in courthouse after courthouse around the country, Donald Trump and the Republican Party have their lawyers advocating to restrict vote by mail, to limit vote by mail, to throw out ballots with vote by mail, to stop counting ballots that are voted by mail. They are anti-voting by mail.
Well, it was still ostensibly important enough for him to record that video in the first place. So how effective do you think that this whole last-minute campaign will be, given just how groomed Republican voters are to not accepting vote by mail?
Yeah, so I think it'll be totally ineffective, which is part of why Donald Trump was probably willing to record the video, and why I'm not worried that this is going to spark a reversal in their behavior. I kind of wish it would, because for democracy, I wish they would embrace vote by mail and call their lawyers off and stop opposing vote by mail in court. But the problem that they have is that they have lied to their voters for so long now that you can't just reverse all of the damage that has done to democracy. Right? They have lied repeatedly to their voters. They have put out movies lying to their voters. They have lied to their voters on the internet, in person, in rallies. That damage is done. That is baked in. There is a generation of Republicans who will never accept that Donald Trump didn't lose in 2020. And they will never accept that one of the reasons why he lost is because of vote by mail. Right. And so there's no reversing that.
Mark, what kind of advantage do you think Republicans have surrendered to Democrats by virtue of vilifying one of the safest and most convenient methods of voting that we have?
They've sacrificed a huge advantage, which is why there is this dual screen, right? On one screen, you have the ravings of an unhinged, mentally ill criminal defendant, okay, who rants and raves about all kinds of things and has no data behind it. And he is vilifying voting and undermining free and fair elections and trashing democracy and saying a whole bunch of things that are untrue. In fact, they're so untrue, the media, mainstream media has even remember there was a time they used to count his lies? They've stopped counting his lies. It's just I think
when we got to 30,000, it became, we kind of started to lose the plot a little bit.
Right. So that's one side of the split screen. The other part of the split screen are the professional campaign operatives in the Republican Party who are actually trying to run a campaign. And they know that there is a huge advantage to having people be able to vote over a prolonged period of time, because not every day, it's not always convenient for every voter to turn up in person on election day. Sometimes there's bad weather. Some voters live miles and miles, tens of miles from the nearest polling location. So vote by mail is easier. Sometimes you have a pandemic that breaks out and vote by mail is easier. There's lots of reasons why having people vote early and vote by mail is preferred by professional campaign operatives. And I'm sure the professional campaign operatives in the Republican Party wish he would stop being crazy on this and just be crazy on other things. But you know what? They made their bed and they have to lie in it. But again, until they call their lawyers off and stop attacking it in court, all of this is just theater.
Now, Trump and Republicans have been claiming for years now that mail-in voting leads to widespread voter fraud and that it leads to rigged elections. Can you speak to these claims and why Republicans have pushed this narrative?
Yeah, so the claims are just lies. I mean, there's not even a way to dignify the claim in a way that doesn't give credence to it. It is a lie. There is no widespread incidence of voter fraud in this country, period. And there's not a scintilla of evidence that vote by mail has any level of fraud that affected any federal election for president or Senate, statewide, like in whatever forever how long. But the fact is that Republicans push this lie because they think it at this point is consistent with what Donald Trump has said, so they have no choice, right? They mouth a lot of things that Donald Trump says that are not true, but also that it is motivating their base, right? So they can record these short videos and play and send them to audiences that are not their base, but their base, wants the greatest hits. Like you sometimes hear people be like, Donald Trump did the greatest hits. One of the greatest hits is that vote by mail causes fraud. And so in some ways, his base is motivated by the aggrievement of having lost an election, and they just want to be motivated by it,
right?
Which is, again, why they don't call off their lawyers from being in court, because that is a message when they say that their lawyers in court, even though their lawyers lose most of these cases, that resonates with the base that is part of this aggrievement mentality.
Yeah, no, they want to be victims. I mean, look what and the fish rots from the head. Look what Donald Trump is doing in the courtroom. He's standing there. This guy is supposed to be the image of strength, and he's complaining about how cold he is. He's complaining about the fact that he can't go to Barron's graduation, which of course he was allowed to do. He complains that he can't stay awake, and it's just wallowing in victimhood, which, by the way, kind of strikes me as bizarre, because when your whole MO is that you're the strong man, and then all you do is present yourself as increasingly weak and having temper tantrums on a daily basis, it doesn't exactly seem to reconcile.
Yeah, and look, he's not just complaining, and he's not just a criminal defendant, and he has to stand when he's told to stand, and he has to sit when he's told to sit, and he's not allowed to say things that violate court orders. But he's also sitting there, claiming that he's going to testify when he's not going to testify.
Right.
He is sitting there while he is being humiliated by a porn star and his former lawyer. He is sitting there being humiliated by his own lawyers, reading into the record various criticisms of him. So he's quite of a shrunken human being. Like, you see his physical posture. He doesn't just look like the buffoonish orange character that we are used to. He's like a diminished buffoonish orange character, and he knows
which is especially bad for him, because again, if his whole thing is that he's a strong man, to now seem weak, to now look as weak as he is especially damaging to the brand, to this image that he needs to prop up. Just for those watching right now, if you want to support the work that Marc and his team are doing right now in the courts, which is ground zero for everything that's happening right now, for all of these Republican attacks against democracy, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet Marc founded to focus on everything voting and elections. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Marc, when we have instances where, for example, Donald Trump records a video like the one that we showed at the top of this video, can you talk about how something like that might actually help the future of vote by mail and early voting in this country if Republicans and Trump truly were going to advocate for it?
Brian, it's a really important question. One of his campaign managers is a woman named Susie Wiles who comes out of Florida politics. And for many, many years, Republicans in Florida prided themselves over their vote by mail and early vote. Like, they would actually say that the reason why they have dominated the governorships have actually been because they have been so much more effective over the last decade and a half in promoting Republican voters to vote by mail and to some extent do early voting. So the crazy tragedy of all of this is that Republicans actually have done well where they have promoted vote by mail. And it is a win for all voters. It is a win for democracy when both parties are embracing all kinds of voting. There's no reason why Donald Trump had to, in 2020, start bad-mouthing vote by mail. There was no, at that point, partisan advantage for Democrats. Right. There was no reason why the Republican Party had to humor it. They could have distanced themselves from it. They could have done the things that Florida Republicans had been doing. And I'm not optimistic about this. I'm not like a wild-eyed optimist that like the Republican Party is going to come back from the brink. It may very well be that the modern Republican Party after Donald Trump will have to go through a period of winter in which literally all of the people who have been complicit with him have to just sort of leave the stage and be replaced by new people. But in a more optimistic note, and it's a weird thing as a Democrat to say this would be an optimistic note. In a more optimistic note, I like to think that eventually the Susie Wiles of the world may reemerge and tell people that early voting is not the enemy of democracy. It is its friend. That vote by mail is not the enemy of democracy. It is empowering voters, and that the future of democracy could somehow revert at least off the trajectory that it's on into something that is more constructive. But I have to end with the same thing I said. It is one thing for Donald Trump to record a video. It is one thing for a bunch of operatives on Capitol Hill in the Republican National Committee headquarters to wish that they could be doing more vote by mail and early voting. But until they stop spending money lying to their voters, until they stop sending their lawyers into courthouses around the country to attack vote by mail, it's all going to be for naught.
Seems like the perfect place to leave off. Again, for those watching right now, if you want to support the work that Marc and his team are doing, please sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on this screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.